Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
I'm not even complaining this year about not watching the Super Bowl because I have just no interest in watching that game. As a Lions fan, you as a Bills fan, just hurts. Although I will say, seeing the way the game has started in terms of score does bring a little bit of a smile to my face.
Wasn't even the best part of the game so far, and it's at halftime right now. But watching the reaction from Taylor Swift to getting booed.
She's never been booed in her life, I bet.
Was the highlight of my month.
I like her. I don't dislike her.
I have no problems.
It's just funny to watch.
It's just funny, right?
Look, it's Four Nations Faceoff break. We're just doing whatever we can to enjoy the time off, and I just didn't want to start that by watching what I assumed to be earlier today another Patrick Mahomes win. And I was like, yeah, I'm just not doing it.
I don't know if you saw what I did on Twitter the day after the Bills-Chiefs game. I muted the word Chiefs. Right, it's life-changing.
Yeah.
You have no idea. Because I enjoy football. I don't want no football on my timeline. I want a lot of football on my timeline. Just not Chiefs content.
So actually something I muted on Twitter that was life-changing was Brad for me personally.
Smart.
So
And I figured out when he did it. And man, when he unblocks me, the heinous stuff he's going to uncover.
The good news is we do have at least some hockey to talk about. The bad news is that it was a loss as Detroit's 7-game win streak was broken, but still lots of takeaways as Detroit heads into the Four Nations break, largely successful. And that's what we're going to talk to you about today. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking about Detroit's only game they've played since the last time we spoke, which was the Tampa Bay Lightning loss at home as the Red Wings are now headed into the Four Nations break. We will get into the takeaways from that game, the overall check-in on the team as we head into the break, where they are in the standings, the Stanley Cup Playoff positioning race, if they're in the wild card hunt still and what their probabilities are, stats updates, and more. We'll talk about rumors around Vladimir Tarasenko, which is a little bit wild to be talking about in the first trade deadline since he was signed on a 2-year deal. And then a little bit on the Four Nations Faceoff, NHL news as different players are available, and more before we jump into overtime. Very quickly, Winged Wheel Podcast night at the LCA, Saturday, March 29th, the Red Wings versus the Bruins. You buy tickets to that, and you get access not only to the Red Wings game at a discounted rate, you also get access to the Winged Wheel Podcast live episode recording at Little Caesars Arena featuring Ken Daniels and other special guests. And you also get a special Winged Wheel Podcast and Detroit Red Wings co-branded jersey. It's a barber pole style jersey this time, so we're pumped about that one. Go to wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings to get your tickets. There are very, very few remaining. I think we're down to our last batch here. No more can be added. So if you like that co-branded merch, the exclusive merch, the giveaways, the Winged Wheel Podcast seating, the discounted ticket, and every ticket represents a donation to the Jamie Daniels Foundation. That's the best way to do it. So again, wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings. Detroit and Tampa Bay started afternoon game on Saturday, the first home game for Detroit after their road trip. And before you could blink, Alex Lyon was out. Cam Talbot was in. 2 goals on 3 shots. Tampa Bay was up 2-0, and they left the first period actually up 4-2. A terrible start that ultimately, that's the storyline of the game. It did Detroit in. The goaltending failing you is the biggest, loudest thing there. I don't think the start for the Red Wings as a team was particularly good either. And when you spot Tampa Bay 4 goals in the first period, you're just going to have a hard time catching up when it's Vasilevskiy at the other end.
I know we've beat it to death over the years, but this really did highlight kind of the gap between what a great team versus a good team looks like. Every team has off periods, off nights, rough goaltending. Look at the second period. Tampa's no different. But there's a big difference between having an off night, off period, and going off the rails. And If your goaltending's letting you down, the defense has to step up. If the defense is letting you down, the goaltending's got to step up. The great teams don't have both happen at the same time. And unfortunately, that is kind of what happened for the Red Wings in that period.
I get what you're saying, but a big part of me is like, road trip, tough schedule. I kind of like, not that I'm excusing the goaltending and saying it's not a problem. Like, that was a problem in that game. That's why they lost ultimately. But I do get it. Like, a few days off of rest, sure, but you're also just kind of like resetting as a player. If you're on the road that long, I think you're almost bound to have a stinker. Now, it's happened a couple times with Lyon. I think Lyon still has been largely quite good this season. Talbot still takes the cake for me so far, but Lyon's not too far behind. But he has had a few of those stinkers, so I'll acknowledge that. But at the same time, I just kind of look at the balance of the road trip and the amount of hockey they've played and the back and forth across time zones. Afternoon games are weird for the Red Wings always for some reason. So not to diminish it, but I almost wasn't surprised to a degree.
I think on balance, the goalies have won more games for the Red Wings than have lost. So I think the Red Wings were due for one of those games, and they did their damnedest to get back into it. I thought they, really controlled play for the majority of the game after that, first 15 minutes of that game.
And they did. Like, that second period, we were talking about it beforehand. The fact that they walked away with just the one goal was so unfair. If you didn't even know who Detroit was playing and you just saw the stats, you're like, yeah, that was Vasilevskiy at the other end. He let in 3, but it was still a really good performance with key saves from him. And Detroit didn't even walk away the first period down 4-0. It was still 4-2. Vladimir Tarasenko scored after Tampa Bay went up 2-0. It was his 300th career goal from Seider and DeBrincat, all starting from Ben Sherratt laying a big hit along the boards, which was awesome in the finish, great for Tarasenko. And then at the end of the first period, which was massive, Patrick Kane on the power play from DeBrincat and Raymond pretty much right away there. And that was a classic connection between DeBrincat and Kane. And you're like, okay, so Detroit went down, 2, and then they got one back, and they went down 3, and they got one back. And then in the second period, Alex DeBrincat with a phenomenal solo effort, stealing the puck, beating Vasilevskiy, and you're like, all right, 4-3, and they're controlling play. That's the kind of battle that we've seen Todd McLellan instill in this team. And I get what you're saying, Brad, like a good team versus a great team. But I think Detroit did all the things they needed to do to get back in this game. Like, if you ran that back in the simulation, 100 times, I wouldn't be surprised if they come back and win, close to half of the times there based on how they played.
Yeah, they absolutely bounced back very, very well. It's just the off the rails moment was a little too long and a little too extreme. And yeah, coming back from the road trip, but they did have 3 days off. Like, there was a good reset in there, and yeah, it's understandable, but there's a difference between an understandable and an excuse. I don't think it was enough to qualify as an excuse. Like the Seattle game, with how their schedule was immediately preceding that, that's one where thankfully they won it, but you could look at it and go, they have every reason to let it go off the rails tonight, and you would understand fully. Having that 3-day break makes this one a little less excusable. Again, understandable. But yeah, they found their legs eventually, and when they did, they really laid the boot to Tampa. But like you said, Vasilevskiy.
I thought Tampa was pretty lucky to get away with the win. When you get spotted that many goals early, it's going to be hard to beat any NHL team.
Yeah.
Especially a team that has Vasilevskiy at the other end. But Tampa was very careless with the puck all night, and the Red Wings were picking up all over that. So I don't think the Red Wings should feel all that bad coming out of that game losing 6-3. I think, Tampa's probably pretty thrilled that they got 2 points, given their performance for the majority of the game was pretty sloppy.
Detroit has had some games on either one of these 7-game win streaks where it's like the goalie stole that game for them or the power play stole that game for them. They didn't necessarily deserve it. And again, not that you come in as a fan saying, okay, we got one that we didn't deserve and now we're going to give one back. And that makes everyone feel happy. No, you're like, wow, Tampa Bay, a divisional rival, we're fighting for the same spots in the standings. You need to come out strong, and you did the opposite. But these kinds of things go both ways, and this is it coming back to the Red Wings. If you pick that second period and you transplant it into any other game, you recognize that that period was one of the best periods of hockey they've probably played since Todd McLellan came in. And that's saying quite a bit. Actually, all year even, if you qualify it that way. So all in all, like, sucks. The win streak stops at 7. And, it sucks to watch another player making their debut score against the Red Wings. Although
it feels like it only happens to the Red Wings. If you are a rookie and you want to make your debut, you are asking for the Detroit Red Wings.
National broadcast too, and I was like, and they're talking about this guy. I'm like, oh my! If I was a betting man, I'd be on just hammering that anytime goal for that kid. Like, cool that his family's in the crowd for that. That must be a cool moment.
I think he went to Michigan as well.
And it was even cooler for him because later that night, his younger brother plays for Michigan. They had a game at Little Caesars Arena, and he also scored.
That's awesome for the family.
That is legit, like, super cool.
Good for them. Bad for Detroit, but good for them. Detroit goes down 6-3, drops the game in regulation. Not great considering the playoff race, but still they, walk away, headed into the Four Nations break, still in a playoff spot because of the favorable results you mentioned on Twitter across the league for Detroit. Pretty much a lot of ideal results there. So all in all, vibes are bad, but it's not like they got absolutely demolished and you have some soul searching to do over the break. You're getting rest. If you're Larkin and Raymond, hopefully you stay healthy, but it's not the end of the world that's the tone you go into the couple weeks off here with.
I actually think it was huge that Columbus and Boston lost on Saturday, because now when the Red Wings are sitting here for the 10 to 14 days, whatever they're off for the Four Nations, they're staring at themselves in a playoff spot, not just outside of it. So that belief will be even higher when they come back, because it's February 9th on our calendar, but on the hockey calendar, it's now late February because they're not playing again until February 20-something. So
22nd, yeah, against
exactly.
Minnesota.
So they are in a playoff spot late February. Is this eerily similar to last year? Yes. Are we going to focus on that? Absolutely not. They are in a playoff spot late February, but now, thankfully, the NHL's poor decision to only have 4 teams in this World Cup this year allows Seider to get rest. It allows Casper to get rest. They don't have to go play for their countries. And I think Seider especially is a guy who desperately needs it, never missing a game in his NHL career. So when he breaks in the calendar, I'm sure he deeply appreciates. Same with Simon Edvinsson right now.
I was going to say, the guy who probably the next time around is on Team Sweden. So thankfully he can recover because he gets banged up a lot too.
Yeah. So obviously, Larkin and Raymond are thrilled to be representing their countries, but they're going to have to really dig deep down the stretch because it is going to wear on them.
Insult to injury that game that Larkin took that puck between the legs. Poor guy. You're like, yeah, that's how this one's going to go. So, okay, Detroit heads into the break. Let's see where they're at in the standings. As of right now, they are holding that wild card 2 spot. They are 1 point behind the Ottawa Senators with a game in hand. So they could technically take that wild card 1 spot. The Tampa Bay Lightning are in the 3rd divisional seed in the Atlantic. Same amount of games played as Detroit, 5 more points. So that's going to be 5 more points and 5 more regulation wins. So that went from looking, not so far behind to, okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of separation there. Not impossible. It's, a week's worth of game changes that, but
it's, hey, the Atlantic 3 seed in a series against Toronto would be fun too. All right, wild card it is, and let's hope we get Washington.
Right behind Detroit is the Columbus Blue Jackets. 1 more game played with 60 points. The Bruins with 60 points with 2 more games played, and the Rangers and the Islanders, both 55 games played, 58 and 57 points respectively. Montreal seems to be falling out of it. It seems like their run here is over. They're starting to, talk about trading Evans kind of thing, and that's about the mix you're looking at if you're the Red Wings. You look at the team stats right now, so they're sitting in a wild card spot. Lucas Raymond in 55 games played at 59 points. Larkin behind him with 50, DeBrincat with 46. Then you have Seider, Kane, 34, 31, and then Tarasenko, Compher as well. So Raymond sitting above a point per game. And I think the most notable thing here of all this is if you look forward, Detroit has 27 games remaining. And it is, when I say it's a gauntlet, it's a gauntlet. I'm pretty sure exactly 2/3 of those games are against teams who are in playoff positions as of today. So that's a tough test. That is a disproportionately tough schedule, the hardest schedule remaining in the league. It's going to be wild. And it's not to say, hey, Detroit's going to absolutely fail here, but you're going to need to see the same kind of positive chaos that you saw the past 15 or 16 games from the Red Wings for them to still firmly be in the mix. You never say never. You hope some teams falter alongside them, but if they're going to earn it, oh boy, is it going to feel good because they're going to earn it this season.
No excuses. It's the point in the rebuild where moral victories mean nothing. They missed the playoffs by a tiebreaker last year. Yeah, playing meaningful games down the stretch is obviously super important if they don't get in, but I don't think there's a single guy in that room who, if they miss the playoffs by a point again, are going to feel any good about it at all, because they had it last year and they can take that. You know what? At least we were there till the last day. We as analysts and fans and three idiots behind a mic can sit here and go, no, relative to what the expectations were, that was great. Nobody in that organization is going to feel that way. They got to get in, and I know what their schedule feels like. But moral victories mean nothing to them at this point.
I was talking to the crew over on Hot Stove on Sirius XM, and I said, like, everyone's just ready for the playoffs. And I understand that is, you know, if you look at the balance of what a rebuild needs or what would help this team the most, you know what would help this team? Schaefer or Misa or Martone. But at the same time, like, no one, the fuel for sitting here and watching mediocrity or, you know, moral victories or those silver linings, that tank is running on empty. The LCA deserves to see playoff hockey. Red Wings fans deserve to see winning playoff hockey. And we've seen how this building and this fan base has exploded with excitement and passion that we haven't seen since the Joe, with any sniff of winning. But with that comes the lows of, if you sink back down afterwards, there's a lot less grace given to the team and the organization. And trust me, we have a pulse on that. The excitement was higher at the lowest points of the rebuild than it was, let's say, start of this year, like late November kind of thing, when they were absolutely atrocious and the vibes were through the floor. I was like, I would have preferred the rebuild in terms of energy from the fan base. People are checking out. So no excuses is right. Like, again, you look at the roster on paper, call it what it is. They're overperforming, and this is a fantastic result so far. And if they don't make it, it's not like it's the end of the world. But that's not the way the fans think, and that's not the way the players think. And I don't think that's the way anyone should think, that this is, you just write it off. I don't care about the draft lottery right now. You go for this.
Well, and the Red Wings aren't going to play the Buffaloes, the San Jose's, the Chicago's in the playoffs. This is the perfect opportunity to prepare yourselves, if you think you belong in the playoffs, to play playoff teams and test your mettle against some of the best, and rightfully so, true contenders if you want to be in there. So it might be a blessing in disguise if the Red Wings do make it, because they'll have been playing, you know, those meaningful playoff type games already by the time the first round comes around. They could catch a team sleeping who's been, you know, the Floridas, the Washingtons, who've been in the playoffs, cemented their spot months ago. They might surprise. So the schedule is difficult, yes, but they have to play good teams in the playoffs. So why not start right now?
You have Columbus twice. By the way, the NHL has to be thrilled that Stadium Series game now means something.
It could have been absolutely terrible.
I would have actually bet, if I was offered a bet, like you walked into my house and you're like, hey, $20, that game means nothing or something. I would have put all $20 and borrowed another $20 from, I would have borrowed another $20 from someone else who had $20 on them to put on, that game's not going to mean anything.
Yeah.
Incredible for the NHL. So twice against Columbus they play, twice against Ottawa they play. That's huge. Tampa Bay and Montreal they play again. Boston they play again. And a lot of other teams. And I know we've talked about this before, but the end of the season, like April, is really, it's just brutal. Here's their last 2 weeks of the season. No, yeah, last 2 weeks of the season. Let's do this. Starting April 6th, you have Florida at home. 2 days later, Montreal on the road. 2 days later, on a back-to-back, you have Florida, then Tampa Bay on the road. The following Monday, you have Dallas at home. 2 days later, on a back-to-back on the road to end the season, you have New Jersey and then Toronto.
Hopefully they're all resting their stars.
I was going to say, hopefully there's a lot of positions locked in those couple of weeks, so they don't mean much to those teams.
What the hell? The snob in me is like, hey, Gary, you don't give these schedules to original 6 teams. What am I getting the expansion schedule for? What is this?
This looks like the Buffalo Sabres schedule. We'll take the Red Wings.
Yeah, hey, Sabres, you suck again this year. Your fans are going to watch anyways. You're going to Siberia. Sorry.
Yeah.
I like the way you put it, Evan. You're going to have to play good teams in the playoffs. So if you want to pretend you're a playoff team, prove that you're a playoff team. That's what you got to do. In terms of the Red Wings and how they're playing, what do you need to see from the team to have confidence that they're at least going to make a run of this? Because again, the odds are stacked against them, but to make a run of it, what do they have to do?
I mean, it's the most obvious statement in the sport of hockey, but they need well above average goaltending to have a chance. Like, that's factoring who they're playing, what their defense is. You're only going to do so much to be able to slow some of these teams from getting the puck to your net. Like, the Red Wings defense at their absolute peak are not stopping Toronto's offense, Florida's offense, Dallas's offense, Carolina's offense. You can maybe minimize the damage, but your goalies are still going to have to step up. That's just the reality of it. And they're going to need some more 5-on-5 offense, because there are going to be games where your goalies don't get it done, like Lyon on Saturday against Tampa. And then you have to go punch for punch with them. And time again, we've seen the Red Wings offense can't. It was refreshing to see the pushback in the game against Tampa where, oh no, they can go toe-to-toe with them. Now it's just to what degree can you bend? And they found the limit where not that much.
I think the biggest one really is the 5-on-5 offense. Everybody knows the whistles go away when the playoffs come around. Some more liberties are taken. The gray area around calls expands exponentially. The Red Wings will have to improve their 5-on-5 production if they want to be a playoff team.
Oh, that's a great point about the playoffs. Just think about that the other days. Even if you can count on this heater for the rest of the season, you are in for a world of hurt. And you've seen teams play on this streak, or these couple streaks that the Red Wings have been on. You've seen teams lock it down and say, yeah, we are not taking a penalty against these guys, in long stretches where Detroit doesn't have a power play for periods and, even a whole game there. Like this, when you're that hot in the power play, teams will adjust. And if you can't back that up 5-on-5, then that's different. Now, I'm going to inject some optimism in here. I like the way that the Red Wings are playing fundamentally within like the means that they have. I don't see a lot from them where I'm like, this is unsustainable or they can't repeat this. I don't see, a depth guy who's just on a 7-8 game heater and you're like, that's obviously going to fall off because he's not that person. I see them playing a kind of game that McLellan has them able to do. Like, these aren't all high danger chances that they're getting when they're out shooting the Tampa Bays, but at least you're getting volume at the net as opposed to before where they were getting nothing at the net. And so through that, you generate opportunities, you generate rebounds, you generate, chances through screens and things like that. Detroit's best players on the top 6 are continuing to do their thing as they have been all season. So you still need to get the depth scoring, I think, to be confident heading into these last 27 or so games. But I think they're doing the right things to facilitate that as much as possible with the roster they have.
Even if they are getting low quality shots, it still means that the Red Wings have the puck, that they are playing offense. They're not being hemmed in their own zone. And some guys just need to be volume shooters, right? Like, they need to be involved in the plays. They need to be starting to get pucks on net. So, yeah, I think really the big picture is there's not really a massive run hot from someone we know who will go completely cold at some point. So I think there is a lot of optimism behind the Red Wings. Like, I over this since December 24, this team has played some inspired hockey.
Health is the big one. Like, you guys are right with the depth, you guys are right with the goaltending, but health is a big one too. And I hate to say it, our custom winged wheel podcast table is wood, so knock on wood there. But when your best players are carrying your offense by and large for the most part, we saw last year what happened when Larkin was injured for those couple weeks or however long, and that meant that they were no longer a playoff team. That would have been the difference. Again, 1 point was the difference. So the health has to be the big one. Now, this emergence from the young players, I hesitate to say you're going to bank on that the rest of the season. And that's not to say, expect doom and gloom. And I'm not trying to say be pessimistic, but young players have ups and downs. And so, Soderblom, I think, has been great, deserves his spot, deserves to stay in the lineup. Kasper, obviously fantastic. Johansson, for a rookie being in that spot next to Edvinsson on the second pair, has done exceptionally well. They're all still going to make rookie mistakes and have those ebbs and flows too. And I'm not saying if those happen, Detroit's screwed. I'm saying when those happen, Detroit needs to be able to cover for it, because they are relying, a lot of the success is coming from those guys.
Another unique benefit to the Four Nations is, and you hear time and time again over the years, players looking back on their rookie season and what they struggled with, and a lot of them say just the grind of it, the 82-game schedule against the toughest competition, the no nights off, and it just wears on them as the season goes. Having this 2-week break probably is really timely for the Kaspers, Edvinssons, Johanssons, who are truly going through this type of schedule for the first time. Now, they've all played pro many years before this, but again, there's nothing like the grind of an NHL schedule. So get a couple weeks off, regroup, rest up, get your mind right, and prepare for 6 or 7 weeks of hell down the stretch to keep doing what they've been doing.
I saw a reply to a tweet. They were asking us, why did I see Alex Lyon at the airport today at 1:30 p.m.? I was like, yeah, it's vacation for these guys. If you're not playing, you are getting somewhere warm as fast as possible.
It's crazy it took him that long to get out.
I was going to say, he must have taken a nap. Anyhow, that is the Red Wings. They're one game. They're headed into the break. That's where they are standings-wise. The gauntlet is coming up. We'll see how they do. More after this, including the Tarasenko rumors, but first, a word from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. When you think about fast food, you probably think about unhealthy, thawed-out patties dripping with grease, the kind of thing Evan likes to eat. But when you're on a tight schedule and need to save time, like when we have to record emergency podcast episodes, you might not have any other option. If this sounds familiar, you need to check out Tempo. Tempo can provide you with protein-packed fuel to save time without compromising your health goals or your episodes. Tempo is a weekly meal delivery service that brings fresh, chef-crafted meals right to your door. These aren't your average frozen dinners. Tempo meals are fully prepared, portioned perfectly, and designed by dietitians to be both delicious and nutritious. We tried Tempo out and we were huge fans. We loved the fact that there was so much variety, all while still meeting our nutrition goals. We went for the protein-packed options, and the meals were genuinely outstanding. Fan favorites had to be the spinach artichoke chicken with farro and the sweet and tangy chicken. The best part, though, no prep, no mess. Just heat them up in the microwave and enjoy in 3 minutes. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. Welcome back. Elliotte Friedman on Sportsnet brought up an interesting name to watch around the trade deadline, and that was Vladimir Tarasenko. We know the story of Tarasenko this year. Yeah, he just scored his 300th goal. That was great. But by and large, Tarasenko has not.
Of his career, not of the season.
That's right, yeah.
Just to clarify.
I think he has, 225 this season or something like that?
Yeah, that's right.
I was going to say, I missed the last 2 minutes of the Tampa game. He must have went off.
Anyhow, that's well and good, but Tarasenko's not been well and good this season. They've been trying everything in the lineup to find a fit. I think you're getting to the point where Dominic Shine came out and there was a chorus of it should have been Tarasenko, and I'm going to be transparent. I was saying the same thing.
I was in that camp. not necessarily was fine, but like if you're looking at the 14 forwards the Red Wings have right now, I can't confidently say he's among the 12 best right now.
And I think it was last episode we talked about it. I'm not sitting here saying, yeah, absolutely give up on Tarasenko, because McLellan has unlocked other guys who we thought weren't going to fit into this team this season as it was. And so maybe something comes from Tarasenko, but at the same time, just what we've seen so far, there's not really been even a glimmer. Like, of all the stories of every player this year, Kane had a down start and picked it up. And Johansson, a rookie coming in and just trying to find his way and then really picked it up. Tarasenko's been kind of this steady, dull line throughout. And I can't sit here with any confidence and say he's going to turn it around.
You can excuse the lack of offense from a Rasmussen, a Kopp, a Comfer, because they know they're going to give you at least a little bit defensively. When Tarasenko's not scoring, there's really not much purpose for him. And I know that's a little cold to say that. Like, you either score goals or you're not a fit for this team, but he was brought in to score goals. He does not provide plus defensive value. I mean, yeah, I'm the guy advocating for the Red Wings to do whatever it takes to get more depth scoring, and I'm saying take a goal scorer out of the lineup, but he's not scoring. Everybody felt good for him, myself included, to get his 300th. The puck just hit him. He just happened to be standing there as Seider took the shot. It brushed off of him and went in. Like,
just an applicator special.
Yeah.
So if you took so he scored obviously in the game against Tampa. If you took away the 2 goals that he scored January 14th versus San Jose, because it's San Jose, he hadn't scored since December 1st.
And those 2 goals against San Jose were basically rebounds that he was just in a good spot for. Great finish. I remember them. He finished well, but your 2 rebound goals and one that glances off of you since December 1. I mean,
if you're one-dimensional and your dimension isn't clicking anymore, that's a problem.
Here's the thing. He was signed to a 2-year, $4.75 million contract. And I harp a lot on Steve Yzerman's free agency contracts, like the bad ones, like the Hall one. And there's contracts where I'm like, I don't really see the justification for it, either the player, the term, the AAV, or a combination of those 3 things. With Tarasenko, I was like, a little richer than what you'd want, but I understood it, and I don't really blame Yzerman for that one.
He wasn't terrible last year.
No, he was provided that depth scoring in a comfortable position with Florida.
And the Red Wings had missed the wave of big offensive free agents, and Perron wasn't coming back. It made absolute perfect sense to go out there and bring in Tarasenko.
You lost goal scoring from the blue line too. So in Gostisbehere. So yeah, it 100% made perfect sense. You want to, get on the term 2 years. He has believe it's a no trade this year, and next year starts to be an 8-team trade list. So we'll get into that in a second. Sure. But at the same time, we know Yzerman was chasing those free agents, and I would rather have this issue than some of those contracts that got handed out this past free agency. Nashville's in a tough place right now.
Oh, 1,000%. I still am in agreement with Yzerman. Even as bad as his contract has turned out, it was the right play given the other options.
So if it's not a fit, I look at that 4.75 and I'm like, well, who's going to take him at that? Another year of that too? So, Detroit can retain, but are they going to have to attach something? Are they going to just have to, retain as much as possible and get future considerations back? Can you have 2 future considerations on one team? They still have San Jose's right now. I can't even begin on discourse around future considerations. Public service announcement. It means nothing. I mean, literally, you will never see anything back from it. It's
nothing. It's just
nothing.
a fancy way of saying nothing.
Maybe a 7th from time to time.
If somebody's looking to help Michkov assimilate into the NHL, Philly, we've got the perfect player for you.
That's just what Tortorella needs. More offense-only Russians. Michkov and Kuzmenko aren't enough. We can build a whole line of them.
I could see him wanting to go anywhere, like anywhere where he's had success, anywhere where he has history, anywhere where it's warm. I don't know if he's like an income tax guy, but a lot of those teams fit the mold of they could potentially use a depth scoring winger. And it stands to reason, if you don't think Tarasenko is completely washed all of a sudden, then on a stronger team, he might have a better fit and be able to extract some kind of offense there.
Here's the reality of the situation, though. All the good teams, if he's chasing a ring, they don't have 475 available.
No, but you retain.
Well, that's the thing. It's what's the better scenario for Detroit here? What will be your preference? You give a team a third-round pick to take him at full pop for the rest of his contract, or do you retain half and basically give him away? Because I think those are the two most likely options.
I retain. Not a question in my mind.
The aggressive salary cap increase over this season and next and beyond, I think you retaining is a very healthy thing to do.
That's where I was at. I just didn't know if I was crazy for thinking that.
You want to hear something crazy is I do think you can catch a team feeling kind of stupid on a certain day, and if you retain full, you might actually get like a fifth or a sixth.
I believe
back.
they call that the trade deadline.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And post Four Nations, it's not a long window to the trade deadline. So maybe he's extra rested, has a great week in Mexico, pops a couple in his first game back, and they have him traded by midnight that night.
Could be. And here's the thing, like anything that happens has to come with his approval. He has to sign off on it. Now, with how the season has gone, I don't know Tarasenko personally, so I don't know how he's feeling about it, but you can't imagine a player in his position is thrilled with the fact that it hasn't worked. You can see him exasperated on the ice. Like when he gets one, you could see the relief on him. So, I mean, the ideal result here, just to call out something obvious, is he turns it around in Detroit and he provides depth scoring for Detroit as intended, and Detroit will be a lot better for it. But it's not like he's 23 and figuring things out, and it's not like he's the symptom of just a terrible team around him, which by and large has picked it up. So we'll see. But I would imagine that a solution that's agreeable to all, I just don't think that would be the holdup here. I think the holdup would be who wants Tarasenko, how much retention, and if you have to attach a rider, is it even worth it? It's not the end of his world, his contract for another year, but how are you going to feel about him and Hall for another year? How are you going to feel about Gustafsson next year? Depends on how the rest of the season goes. You're going to want to start to make decisions on these guys, and especially because, if players are pushing for roster spots, I think Tarasenko is holding a spot right now where, a guy is either sitting in the press box or could be called up depending on the injury situation, and it's feeling kind of full. So next season, if Danielson's pushing, if Mazur's pushing, that's a spot.
I don't think Yzerman would ever admit it publicly, but I think there's enough contracts on this team he'd be willing to stomach giving a guy away for nothing, retaining half on another guy for nothing, and then buying out another guy at the end of it just to unload some of these contracts. So you can pick whoever bad contract I'm talking about, but I think he would be willing to probably even add a rider to at least one of them to free up the cap space.
I just don't know what Vladimir Tarasenko wants, right? Like has financial security for generations, for lifetimes. He just coming off winning a Stanley Cup. Is he looking like
Anaheim's doing some weird stuff these days.
Yeah, and like his spot in Detroit, like him being in Detroit, like I understand it. Obviously, you're not turning down that kind of money at this point in your career. It just feels like an odd fit. It hasn't worked out. Like, what is Vlad Tarasenko looking for if, in fact, he would want to move on from Detroit?
Well, here's the thing. His contract is 2 years, so he locked in probably more money than he thought he was going to get that late into free agency.
100%.
Not as much term as he wanted, but 4.75 is nothing to scoff at for a guy that was in his position. But he knows his next contract is coming up. He's, I think, 34 is his expiry age. He has to get on a good team and produce, so his next contract is viable for him. Otherwise, he's probably going back to the K or something like that.
Yeah.
Where he'll make more money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he ring chasing, or does he want to show up to every practice in flip-flops for the rest of his career? I think both are options.
As of right now,
You
yeah.
can do
Why
that?
not? Yeah, in Florida, yes.
There's teams in Florida, Texas, California, even Tennessee.
You have named a few playoff teams.
Yeah, not
You
the
can.
Tennessee
There
part.
are scenarios you can do both.
Yes. Very and I'm sure that's the dream here. Tarasenko seems like a fiery guy. Like I don't want to write him off as a guy who only cares about the money and his personal stats. I'm sure he had a blast winning that cup with Florida. He's probably looking back on that fondly right now and going, huh, how do I get back there? Now that I have the check secured, how do I get back there? Because what was Florida offering him, if anything? A minimum contract at most?
So what you're saying is Detroit trades him to Chicago. Chicago at half retained. Chicago retains half, and then he's in Florida close to league minimum.
If you're a GM out there and you're doing a 3-way trade to get Vlad Tarasenko as retained at possible, you're a dweeb. Go away.
They have not watched the NBA for the past week.
Well,
trades are being undone in the NBA. Hey, NBA, undo that Lakers trade. No, not that one. That was wild.
But
Evan has no idea. I'll fill you in the Patreon exclusive overtime.
You could make up the names, and I would have no idea who they are.
But you know the Luka Doncic trade.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That one was wild.
Yeah,
I saw, who was it? Brandon Ingram was on the Raptors or something. I'm like, yeah, I missed a lot. But I mean, it's not crazy if you're Florida, because I'm using Florida as the hypothetical. Detroit, again, I think would be happy to unload him for future considerations at half retained, because it's better than a buyout option, and it's better than adding a sweetener. And then if you find a middleman like a San Jose, and all you're giving San Jose for retaining like $1 million, call it a 6th round pick, Vlad Tarasenko for near league minimum is probably well worth a 5th or a 6th round pick, I would think, especially when you're going to get a year and a half out of him versus just a rental.
In addition to the players coming up, it's a good point, Brad. Like I do agree with that. And I think you lean on solutions like that. And I think over a buyout as well, because you want the cap off sooner rather than later. Because let's say you buy him out and then that cap is extended for another season. Like you don't really want you want your books a little clean.
Unless you get stupid lucky and you land a Rantanen and a Marner in the offseason, the Red Wings probably aren't a cap team next year.
And you look at it, not that it didn't matter before, but when you had bad contracts, like we'd sit and complain about the bad contracts, sure. But it was okay to hold them through. You now look at the position the Red Wings are in. I feel confident and not like an insane person saying they're on the precipice of potentially becoming a consistently good team who is consistently in the mix for a playoff spot. That's the first time we've been able to say that in a long time. With that, you want to shed your cap structure of the Hall contracts, of the Gustafsson contracts, of the Tarasenko contracts, because you have to, again, be ready to move if there's a Marner or a Rantanen, or if you see a guy who's an efficient buy at the middle salary tier, well, you can't get another player in that middle salary tier because you have too many, pieces of dead weight that you can excise, that you can remove. And so now it's important to start to make the moves to remove these guys rather than just wait it out, because you are a good team and you have to start kind of acting like it with your cap structure. With Tarasenko, again, we'll see. The first trade deadline has come and gone with the whole Four Nations Faceoff, which I guess the GMs were kind of expecting, but was a bit of a surprise. The real trade deadline is not long after the break, as Brad mentioned. So curious to see how this one shakes out. We'll let you know if anything else gets shaken loose in the interim.
I was going to mention, I think they're allowed to make trades over the Four Nations Faceoff, and then I remembered when Alex Lyon shows up on a beach, half the NHL GMs are probably going to be there waiting for him.
Which actually probably is where trades are going to get done. So let's not rule that out. All right, Four Nations Faceoff. From a Red Wings perspective first, Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, the two Red Wings playing Team USA, Team Sweden, obviously. I mean, it's an easy answer. What are you looking for from them? Success, fun, more than anything, just please stay healthy.
That's essentially it.
Right? It'll be cool to see. Obviously, Larkin, that's not a surprise, but it'll be really cool to see Lucas Raymond play for Sweden as he's emerged into this next step of a player. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as one of the more impactful players in that tournament.
It is crazy to think about. We really haven't seen Larkin in a best-on-best capacity in a tournament like this. We obviously haven't seen Raymond. So more so than anything else, I am curious to see how they look in this environment relative to all the other superstars around the league.
I think they're going to be Raymond especially, I think, is going to be an important role for Sweden.
I mean, Sweden has like 11 forwards of the same variety. So it's just going to be whoever's running hot because they don't really have any specialists. They've got a lot of average to undersized, highly skilled forwards who fit the Lucas Raymond description. So they could be a fascinating lineup where they can maybe just play the run hot.
It'll be a super interesting experiment to see where they sort of stack up against the true superstar talent across the league, because it's always hard to evaluate at obviously the All-Star game for very obvious reasons. And then, in the regular season, you're always mixed in with lesser players, the third line, fourth liners. But this is now truly like the best of the best playing for something that I will say matters. That's maybe up to debate a little bit, but they're representing their country. I will say that it matters for now. So it'll be very interesting to see how they truly do stack up against the best on the planet.
Now, I want to say this tournament is, again, 4 teams, and the NHL will say it's because they want to figure out how to do a World Cup and before they start to scale it. I think the obvious answer here is that they wanted the Russia situation to be solved, and it wasn't. And they're like, rather than make a decision there, that let's just scale the whole thing back. We've argued and discussed and debated till the sun has come up about that decision. So forget that for now. It's just 4 nations this time. And then after this, in 2026, you're going to see the Olympics, and the expectation is that NHL players will be there. And then in 2028, the 4 nations will be a World Cup. So hopefully, in a few years here, we're going to say we have every 2 years international best on best hockey in some capacity, which I think is the goal state.
The crazy thing is by 2028, you'll actually be able to get your 4 nations merch because it's just becoming available then.
Oh, I've got a funny story on this. So obviously my store carried a handful of the 4 Nations stuff, mostly Leaf players and like your superstars. We only got our stuff in like a week and a half ago. We got Nylander, Matthews, McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon were the only player names we carried. All of them but McKinnon got a letter for their team. And because it was so last minute and so poorly planned, none of the jerseys came with C's or A's. So now every customer that comes in is asking the same damn thing. Can I get a C on this? No, you cannot. Have a good day. Very cool. It's not just us. That is every store that got the same garbage. Way to go, NHL.
How could we have known this would happen?
I'm personally shocked.
I am too.
I'll stuff this into a folder of NHL jersey failures.
Like we wanted to do a 5 nations, but we could only maybe handle the logistics of 4.
We saw the color scheme on Germany and we just went, that's going to be tough.
That's an extra couple colors. We can't do that.
Canada's just red and white. Actually, I will say the Canada in person, the red and cream does actually look phenomenal. Sweden's only yellow and blue. They made it easy for us. Finland, white and blue. Czechia, Germany, Slovakia. This is why we couldn't invite you. We're sorry. It's just too many colors.
It's still combinations of red, white, and blue, though.
We're going to ignore the states. They get the special exemption, okay? Every other team only gets 2 colors.
The tournament starts on Wednesday, February 12th, and it ends, I believe, on the 20th. And the way it works is it's going to be a 3-2-1 point system. So regulation win is 3 points. Overtime or shootout win is 2 points, and an overtime or shootout loss is worth 1 point. Regulation loss, obviously, you get nothing. Pretty much teams are going to play 3 games in a round robin, and the 2 teams with the most points after the round robin will just play a championship game. So it's a very minimal tournament.
I actually did not know the format till you just laid it out.
Yeah, it's a lot of people don't. This whole thing is look, I'm gonna watch.
I like how when something is stupid, you look at me because you know how dumb I think all of this has been.
Pretty much, I'm like, what Evan hates this face is he making? And this time it was this squinty, this sounds dumb. Are you making it up?
No,
face.
I knew that this was I heard this and then I forgot it, and then you have brought it up again. So now I remember my initial reaction when I heard this. It's just actually we can't play one more round of sudden death hockey. We couldn't just.
No, there's 4 teams. You're already in that round.
I can ask the question.
Well, a win or go home thing. Why do we need to jump right to the finals or the gold medal game, whatever they're calling it.
I actually like the format, given that it's only 4 teams. This is the format that probably makes the most sense. But I was going to ask a question to get the Evan look on Ryan's face. I haven't looked into a lot in this tournament, and I will watch the games. But Ryan, where can I watch the games? Do you know?
Oh, you could ask 32 fan bases where they watch their games, and they may not know either.
I don't even know
he did
where
the
NHL
look.
games are. And like,
I know. I saw you getting into it on Twitter.
like,
Well, viewership is significantly down.
Here-
And everyone's confused as to how that could possibly be when revenues have never been higher.
let's do NHL news and let's do this because that's a
Okay.
great point, Evan.
Okay.
Viewership numbers, especially as you look at the national networks, TNT and ESPN, they're not really seeing consistently the numbers that they want to see. And that's putting it generously. There's some indicators that it's way down. Here's the thing, and I think every hockey fan will tell you this. Hockey fans are watching hockey as much as they ever have. I believe like the ones who want to seek out and find games, they're just not all places where it's tracked. Streaming, the 7 Cs, but this is where there's an issue. The league and these networks are looking at it justifiably because this is where all the money is. And I understand this is the money that pays the players, that, creates the whole media system, and we benefit from this too. Blah, 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 whatever. The league is focusing on this from we need TNT and ESPN and these major networks to benefit because we want Amazon to bid on, more games as Prime expands. Maybe the next TV deal is another big conglomerate, like multiple network deal. But what you're missing out on is capturing new fans who can just turn on the TV and see a hockey game. You're missing out on fans, and believe me, this exists. Look at the replies to that tweet I posted. It exists everywhere. People who just, if they can't get the games, they stop watching. It's that simple. And you're like, I can't imagine it. I'm a diehard fan. It's because you're a diehard fan. I'm not talking politics here, but think about, an election. What is all the campaigning for? It's not for the solid base that's going to vote red or vote blue no matter what. It's for the people who are in swing states or who are flippable. And think about viewers that way. If you can show them the game, you have a chance of getting them to watch hockey. If they can't watch it, they're going to stop or they'll never see it. And that's what we're missing out with this, because you have to have, Bally Sports Detroit, you have to have ESPN Plus, you have to have this network. Oh, this is a national game, but on this one's in a blackout region. But if you have spun around 3 times and didn't step on any sidewalk cracks that day, they might let you watch the second period with inverted color. Like, it's so stupid and hard to watch games. People who pay for subscriptions are pirating. They're watching pirated streams because it's more reliable than the services being provided by the whatever local region, like their equivalent of FanDuel Sports Detroit or wherever, MSG Plus or wherever, or because they just can't log in, they're blacked out.
I think the funniest thing about all of this is the networks and the league complain about the lack of viewership, but they're the ones who've implemented the roadblocks to users accessing NHL and hockey content.
I know I sound stupid. Like, I know the people who are involved in the contracts and the legislation about, like, broadcasting regions and all that stuff that's complicated, and they see the flow of money coming in from these networks, paying big money for these deals into the league. I understand how stupid that rant sounded. I also called FanDuel Sports.
Yeah, but you're an end user. Like, those are the people who pay the bills. They're the ones who pay the subscriptions. They're the ones that go to games. They're the ones that get their Four Nations Faceoff merchandise without letters and in 2028.
Thank you. That's what matters. If you work in any kind of like product delivery, let's say software delivery, if you are getting into this convoluted space and the end user has to click on something 17 times, it's a terrible product and you shouldn't ship it. That's how they have to look at it. I understand the justification for all of these complicated webs, like your Charlie from It's Always Sunny, but it should be simple to watch hockey, period.
That should be part of the NHL's opening negotiations. It should be, this is what we want. Are you interested? Yes or no? And if they say no, or they've got all this convoluted, market share with other networks, and it's like, no, thank you. Amazon, please come over here and we'll talk to you instead.
Simplicity is king. People will pay if the product is good. We have a thing up here in Canada through one of the evil telecoms. It's just called Center Ice. It's insanely expensive, but 0 games are blacked out. Every game is available. I've never not been able to watch a game. I've got the thing where you can talk into the remote and it'll just take it to whatever. So I remember there was a night early in the season, there was a game going to overtime, call it Sharks Canucks, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I just said into the mic, Sharks Canucks game. Amazon Prime opened up. Did not know that was a thing. Didn't even know they were broadcasting it till there was actually a game being aired on Amazon Prime. It's insane how many different services you need. And like I said, all my friends that I know that are hockey diehards pay for the Center Ice here, which I repeat is insanely expensive because they appreciate the simplicity of it.
When the NHL had at different points, and it's different in different regions, but at different points they had NHL TV and you could just pay and you could pick your stream. And I remember my biggest complaint was, oh, this is only 1080p. How stupid I was for complaining about that. Because again, yeah, whatever, put, my stupid hat on here, my dunce cap. I know I don't know what I'm talking about, but whatever network owns the broadcast, broadcast it on TV, figure out the licensing where you can just log on to nhl.com. So anybody who has seen a computer can ostensibly find hockey, click the game. Okay, it's NBC's, it's the outdoor channels, it's the golf channel, it's TNT, it's ESPN, but that broadcast in there, great. All those commercials shown on that screen, all the intermission shows shown on that screen, doesn't matter. Just be able to watch the team you want to watch. If you want to package it all together so you can't pick by team, you want to be greedy with pricing, sure, just make it available first. We do this rant quarterly, and somehow we've been doing it quarterly for the last decade.
Well, every time the drop in viewership comes up and the NHL and TNT and ESPN are always shocked, it's like the solution's right in front of you.
And I think there's good products emerging. I don't think it's perfect at times. But I like the direction TNT is moving in, for example.
100%.
Biz taking a ton of heat for the Bedard, just kind of criticizing Bedard. But I'm like, you know what? I think those kind of conversations are good for hockey. So like, it's not that the product is terrible. It's just not accessible. And there's this whole, oh, please love my game thing. I got a bit of that today. But I'm like, I would stand by hockey being the most entertaining sport on earth until my dying days. I'm biased, though. I still think in a neutral way, if you show a neutral person who has not seen hockey before, hockey at its best, they'll say, wow, this is a great sport, but they just don't see it.
Yep.
Anyways, let's move on to more NHL news. The names that are emerging in the trade market have become more and more interesting. Zegras' name is popping up again, which, as he returns to health and maybe some form, that was going to be natural. But Dobson's name came up with the Islanders. And I thought that one was a little bit weird. And Islanders fans would probably think otherwise. They're probably thinking, he had one down year, or maybe he only had one up year, however you want to interpret his play, but you can understand it maybe. But I don't know. If Dobson's there, do you take a look at that?
Please tell me his contract.
He's an RFA with Arbright's $4 million for the rest of the season, but then he's coming up for a contract. Should note he's on LTIR right now. He got hurt at the end of January, so I don't really think there's a timeline for his return, but yeah, his name has popped up.
There's 2 answers here, both of which make sense in my mind. First, if the cost is reasonable, acquire every good player you can. Noah Dobson is a very, very good player. He would make the Red Wings better. If the acquisition cost is at all reasonable, there's no reason you shouldn't do it. Second part that also makes sense in my head is I know that acquisition cost will not be reasonable. And when you look at the right side of the Red Wings defense with Seider and specifically Sandin Pellikka coming, those assets and those dollars need to be spent elsewhere in the lineup at a more, we'll call it urgent level. They still need top 6 forwards. They still need left-handed D. Right D is not a high priority given what the Red Wings have. So if the Islanders are having a fire sale and letting him go because Lou forgot what type of premium a right-handed defenseman on the first pair should get, then absolutely jump on it and you figure out the Sandin Pellikka thing later. But that's not likely. So I feel like there are higher priorities.
And this is all assuming like that this is actually something that will come to fruition. If anyone's going to rival Steve Yzerman in terms of very little gets out, it's Lou Lamoriello. But at the same time, Lou is also a very unpredictable GM. You never really know or anticipate the moves he's going to make. So you see that name, if you start to see a little bit more smoke, then you wonder. Then you get into, though, like you mentioned Sandin Pellikka. Like, I get it. You go for the good player if he's available, but then you dig into, like, if they're moving on from him, let's say potentially. And he's not the first young defenseman's name to come up. Like, there was a whole thing with, was it Brant Clark in LA? Like, it seems to always happen in a young defenseman's life cycle where they're not just immediately a star and they're like, maybe he's going to be moved. But you don't want to go in and then have to spend, like you said, on a big contract. I don't know. That one, I would wonder more about what's kind of underlying there and how his numbers translate into what he actually could be, or if this is more of like a reputation ride. Anyways, okay, there's going to be plenty more, but for now, let's jump into our final segment here on the Winged Wheel podcast. First, a word from our sponsors.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes. We record them right after these main ones. If there's any good bloopers, I promise you they'll be in there. We let loose, have fun, answer any questions that didn't make the main show. We do thoughts with Evan. We are just generally a little unhinged, so take it as you will. There's not really words to describe it. You also are automatically entered into all of our giveaways and have an opportunity to enter into a giveaway for 2 tickets. We run it for every Detroit Red Wings home game. So 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game, all of them going directly to our Patreon supporters. And you get access to our Winged Wheel podcast exclusive Discord, all of that and lots more. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Let's take some questions. Datsuk's Dangleberry says, if you are opposing teams that may match up against the Wings in the first round and you watch them in a rematch after JT going to IR and almost Rasmussen as well, what would you think of this team? Is this the same level of Sabres not defending Tage? And we didn't talk about that in the Tampa Bay game, but unsurprisingly, there wasn't really a response to Tampa Bay. I understand you started the game down 2, and that kind of takes a lot of the wind out of those sails, but you really only saw the kind of fire from Edvinsson at the end of the game with Asimon or whoever it was. And I get it. It's Neanderthalic, but at the same time, like the game score wouldn't allow it, but it was a little weak.
I mean, I agree. You want to see pushback. Maybe when they were down 4-1, that might have been the time. But this was just such a big game for the standings. I think the coaches were probably like, hey, we want to get him, but we need these 2 points way more, and we can't be spending half the game shorthanded.
You want my meathead answer?
Worth it?
No, but once you're down 6-3, then you go run someone.
Oh, yeah, 100. You don't run. I wouldn't be at the point of running anybody there. That is a little too outside the code. You run Kucherov.
Yeah, although
they did score an empty net. You could have, went to make a play on the puck.
Imagine. I wish that was like a breakaway empty net, like the exact same way Rasmussen's was. And then you just get the trip. Kucherov, I think, actually got banged up in that game at some point. So maybe someone got a sneaky little slash in there somehow.
Well,
Hang the banner, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Go back frame by frame, see if anything happened.
It's not quite Buffalo. Buffalo has some rot in there. But I do think this team, and I think it's part of winning, but that kind of, watch how Tampa Bay responds. Everyone is in, and everyone is ready to you're like, that guy is rabid.
You think Kucherov could have done that play to anyone of Florida?
Oh, no.
He would have.
I hope he does.
He would have been Florida most wanted, number 1 on the hit list.
That is an extremely high bar to set.
Yes.
Florida most wanted.
Yeah.
Florida man is running for his life from a pack of other Florida men.
Yeah, that headline probably ran today.
Decent chance. Tampa and Florida have the mentality that it seems like every scrum is, you can't penalize all of us.
Yep.
We dare ya. We'll take a 2-minute, but we're getting 10 minutes worth of infractions
if you think the refs are
here.
going to get the calls right, then you're an idiot. And Florida and Tampa are willing to bet that the refs will not get it right.
That seems like an even up, as it's just 5 guys pounding Kucherov.
Boys, how many times do I have to tell you? Keep the shivs in your gloves until you need them.
Didn't Garrett Rank give a penalty call where it's like everyone on the ice got a 10-minute misconduct? I respect the hell out of that.
I love those. I love when refs are just like, yeah, everyone else is just gone.
I love that so much.
I have the image of Rank doing that in my head, and I swear to God, I'm imagining it happened in Florida's rink. So
maybe. Ariel says, would you rather only win the games you deserved, quote unquote, to win, but never lose a game where you get outplayed, or have it more random like hockey? No, the beauty of hockey is that you can scrounge out a win by just showing up in big moments.
Given that the Red Wings are currently a mediocre team, give me the randomness, please.
Wings fan in Chicago says, what did the Wings do with defense this offseason? Sure, Seider is able to carry the top pair with Sherratt, but our top pair's advanced numbers have dropped significantly since swapping Edvinsson with Ben. Do we eat it for 1 to 2 more years while we wait for ASP or find a stopgap? It's tough because you have Johansson in a good spot right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say Johansson has to be moved down to the third pair. But if you think about the ideal state of the Red Wings, you have a Johansson type on your third pair, and ASP is ready on the second pair. But as for next season, I don't know if that will be ready yet.
There's not a lot of great options at D available to solve this problem currently. So you're probably running it back with Edvinsson, Johansson, Sherratt, Seider. They'll probably look long and hard at a Justin Hall trade, buyout, whatever the best option is there. Petrie's contract is expired, so maybe you look at a Gavrikov, a Kovacevic. Pettersson's off the market now, so I don't know who the better options are out there. In a perfect world, you get someone good enough that you're putting either Sherratt or Johansson down on the bottom pairing with Gustafsson, but easier said than done.
Next question here from Marco Casper, King of Australia, says, good day, lads. It's been a while, so I thought I'd show some proof of life. Good to hear from you again. In order to gauge whether Sandin Pellikka is ready to come over to North America and schedule permitting, do you think there's any possibility or merit in giving him a cameo so as to not burn a year of his ELC, so 9 games?
Again, I've said this in regards to other prospects, but it's worth repeating here. I hope not. And it has nothing to do with Sandin Pellikka. I hope those games are too important than to give a rookie an audition.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, like that would be, it's been a long time since we've even been able to think that way.
Yeah, we want those games to matter, and it's going well enough that they don't want to screw with the lineup. You know what I mean? So if Sandin Pellikka wants to come over and play a bunch of games in Grand Rapids, that would be best case scenario. That would be phenomenal. But we'll see how Skellefteå does, which ain't great. So maybe
sitting not terrible, but not the best. All right, moving on here. I think we have time for about one more. They're Canadian. That's how says someone is going to sustain a significant injury during the fake tournament that's happening over the next 2 weeks. We all love best on best, but not at the expense of the NHL season. Hockey should be in the Summer Olympics. Ooh. The World Cup of Hockey should be in September, and this upcoming abomination should never have been scheduled, but the NHL gets $700 a pop for nosebleed seats, so there's that.
I actually agree strongly with the NHL being in the Summer Olympics. I get the optics of it are super weird.
They already play hockey in the summer. It's called the Stanley Cup Playoffs.
Yeah, I
have my own problems with.
I'm in full support of it, but knowing how the NHL operates, the World Cup of Hockey will never happen in September, because the whole reason the break starts the day after the Super Bowl is they do not want to go up against the NFL. It's that sweet spot in the window before baseball starts and after football ends, where it's just hockey and basketball, and they can get that segment of the market. So I understand that, even though me as a fan, as a diehard hockey fan, would prefer it in September. For NHL viewership and money, when they're doing it does make sense.
And to the point of the, players going to get injured. Look, I'm horrified of something happening and Larkin or Raymond misses time, because then
didn't it happen to Zetterberg at the 2014 Olympics?
And like that kind of thing has burned teams a lot. We've talked about it recently. But I think the same way we tell NHL teams in the NHL, like, you need to allow these players into the Olympics because fans deserve best on best. It's unfortunate, but it's not like a social contract, but it's like a contract with the concept of professional sport. If you're going to be an NHL team and you're going to print money and you're, billionaires making more billions, you have to give back to the sport, and that means allowing your players to play. There's all this back end stuff about insurance and who covers what, and I can't tell you how little I care.
Literally don't care.
Don't care who pays it. Does not matter. This person's corrupt. That person's corrupt. I'm sure everyone's corrupt and wrong and right. Don't care. As long as the fans get to watch international best on best, that means fans are going to be pissed off and disappointed. But
your end users who pay all the money?
Exactly. We're just ending up back there. As for the semantics of it, I do see the merits of the arguments that you and our friend here have made. I'm just happy that we're gearing towards seeing it again. Like, remember when we first heard the concept of the Team North America versus Team Canada versus Team Europe, like, that got a lot of scoffs. That was sweet as hell.
I want Team North America in the Olympics. Make it happen. I don't know how it'll work in the medal count. Just one.
It might. And with that, we're going to wrap this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Tune into our Patreon exclusive overtime for more. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We really, really appreciate it. We don't record this show over the Super Bowl if you all didn't make it worth it. So we can't say thank you enough to all of our listeners, new and old, to all of our Patreon supporters. You make this entire thing happen. Thank you again to the sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast. And if you want to support the Winged Wheel Podcast, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. And if you want to support the show, but Patreon's not for you, tell a friend about the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever. Leave a review, whether it's a thumbs up or the hearts or a review. All of that's a big help. To our name level supporters on Patreon, we can't thank you enough. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. The Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Brandon Mann, new name level supporter, Brett Kokesh, Caro Brutanana Lusky, Carl Provi, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gimmer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Grand Rapids Gurley, Griffin God Creatives, Hatrick Sandine Pelika, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, aka Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Casper the Friendly Ghost, Lunchbox, Casper the Friendly Post, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Ludland, Mr. Kuzi. Now I have to learn how to click on a Macintosh. Podgy713, R.A. Podgy, welcome to the Dub Dub Club. Appreciate you becoming a name level supporter. Raptor Kitchen, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Skeletor, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ordeleb, That's What I Appreciate It's About You, Wallman's Late Dancing D, Wings Fan of Chicago, Iser Plan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohanna, The Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, AA Ron, AB, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chimkim, Gut, and Small Nuts, Chris Felinsky, new name level supporter, Commander Ben Barron, The Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Datsukes Dangleberries, Deep In, Seider, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, DeLucas Larkmond, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, Kevin McCracken, Quads, Larkin's Loyal Lemming, Lennon Vandersand, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Ryan M, Sandy P, Right Hand D, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Therefore say unto them, Thus saith the Lord, these Jake stats are out of control. Trent Thorough, What's the D for? Wings fan and St. Louis Scott, and your second favorite patron. We'll see all you lunatics on Wednesday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at WingWheelPod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Wingwheel Podcast on Instagram.